There's a pattern researchers keep noticing in cross-cultural relationship psychology. When people from vastly different backgrounds come together, different languages, different histories, different emotional blueprints, something unexpected often happens. Not conflict, not confusion, connection. Deep, disorienting, surprisingly real connection. And it raises a question that psychology hasn't fully answered yet. What is it about certain cultural upbringings that shapes emotional depth in ways other environments simply don't? By the end of this video, you're going to understand two things that most people in this conversation get completely wrong. First, why the traits that seem most foreign are often the ones that feel most familiar at a deeper psychological level. And second, what most Western men misread as emotional distance is actually something far more nuanced. And what most people assume is the obvious explanation is almost never the real one. Russian culture has been shaped by centuries of resilience. Geopolitical pressure, economic instability, generational hardship, and a deeply communal social structure that placed enormous weight on family, loyalty, and emotional endurance. What emerged from that environment wasn't just a national identity. It was a psychological profile, a particular way of processing emotion, building relationships, and defining personal value. In modern attraction psychology, researchers study what's called cultural emotional scripts, the internalized rules a society teaches its members about how to feel, when to show it, and what it means to love someone. Russian culture, by most cross-cultural measures, produces an unusually strong and distinctive emotional script, and that script is what this video is really about. Here's something most people don't consciously realize about attraction. We're not primarily drawn to people who are comfortable. We're drawn to people who are capable. Capability under pressure. Capability in uncertainty. Capability when life doesn't cooperate. Russian women, broadly speaking, are raised inside a cultural framework that doesn't soften difficulty. From childhood, the expectation is that you develop emotional and practical competence, not as an achievement, but as a baseline. This isn't harshness. It's a different calibration of what it means to be prepared for life. In psychological terms, this produces what researchers call high frustration tolerance, the ability to sit with difficulty without falling apart. And that quality, in a relationship partner, registers on an almost subconscious level. People feel safer around people who are steady. People feel more attracted to partners who are not easily rattled. That's not cultural preference. That's attachment psychology. What's fascinating about the Russian family model is how much emotional density it produces. In many Western upbringings, particularly in American culture, individualism is the core value. Self-expression, personal space, emotional independence. These are taught early and reinforced constantly. The Russian model runs differently. Family loyalty isn't a preference, it's a foundational identity value. The relationship between a Russian woman and her parents, her grandparents, her immediate community is often deeply woven into who she understands herself to be. And this shapes her approach to romantic partnership in a specific way. When someone is raised in a high-loyalty cultural model, they tend to bring that loyalty architecture into their closest relationships. They don't love casually. They don't commit halfway. When the connection is real, the investment is total. That psychological pattern, what attachment researchers call secure high-investment bonding, is rare in any culture. And it's something people recognize, even if they can't name it. But here's where it gets more interesting, and where most people operating on surface-level observations go completely wrong. There's a persistent Western misconception that Russian women are emotionally cold, reserved, hard to read. And on first encounter, especially across a language barrier or cultural gap, this reading is understandable, but it's inaccurate. What's actually happening is a cultural display rule difference. Every culture has unspoken rules about when emotion is appropriate to show publicly versus privately. In American culture, emotional expressiveness in public settings is normalized and even encouraged. In Russian culture, public emotional display, particularly with strangers or in early acquaintance, is restrained. Not because the emotion isn't there, because emotional depth is considered private, reserved for real intimacy, not performed for social approval. When you understand that distinction, the reserve doesn't read as coldness anymore. It reads as selectivity. And selectivity, psychologically, is one of the most powerful signals of genuine value. On the surface, it looks simple. Underneath, it's not. Russian women are often described as independent, and that's accurate. But the Western interpretation of independence and the lived reality of Russian female independence are not the same thing. In American cultural framing, independence often means emotional self-sufficiency, the idea that needing someone is a weakness to be overcome. In Russian cultural framing, independence means capability, the ability to handle what life brings while still choosing, genuinely and freely, to build with someone. That distinction matters enormously in relationship psychology. A partner who is capable but choosing to be present is fundamentally different from a partner who is present because they feel they have no other option. One is a relationship built on mutual freedom. The other is dependency dressed as love. Research in relationship satisfaction consistently finds that partnerships where both people maintain individual competence and identity, while genuinely choosing the relationship, produce the highest long-term satisfaction scores. Russian cultural upbringing, in many ways, naturally produces this psychological profile. This is the part nobody talks about. Any culture shaped by hardship produces something in its people that comfortable cultures rarely do: a profound understanding of what it means to be alone with yourself. Russian literature, Russian music, Russian emotional culture is saturated with a quality that has no perfect English translation, a kind of beautiful melancholy, an awareness of impermanence, a comfort with emotional depth that doesn't require resolution. In psychology, this is related to what researchers call existential tolerance, the ability to sit with uncertainty, loss, or longing without needing it to be fixed immediately. And in a partner, this quality produces something rare: the ability to truly witness another person's pain without running from it, to be present in the hard moments, to understand that love isn't always joy, and to stay anyway. This is what people are often reaching for when they describe feeling understood by someone from a different cultural background. They're not experiencing a language, they're experiencing an emotional philosophy. And this is where psychology changes everything, because none of this exists without a shadow side. The same cross-cultural attraction dynamics that create genuine deep connection also create a psychological trap: idealization. When someone is perceived as different, exotic, mysterious, emotionally unfamiliar, the human brain tends to fill the gaps with projection. We assign meaning to behaviors we don't fully understand. We interpret reserve as depth, silence as wisdom, unfamiliarity as profundity. The idealization problem in cross-cultural attraction is well documented. And the antidote isn't to dismiss the real differences, because they are real. The antidote is awareness, recognizing when you're responding to an actual person versus a psychological projection of your own needs. Real cross-cultural connection happens when both people are seen clearly, not as representatives of their culture, but as individuals shaped by it. That's a harder thing to achieve, and it's also the only version worth building.